Thank you for being with me today. We're going to talk about giving effective PowerPoint presentations. So as you're presenting in our business going forward, this is going to be a key aspect that we're going to use when disseminating our information. So I'm Mike Stelmar. I've got 20 years experience presenting to groups both large and small. My background is I was a sales manager for Cabela's. I've also been a training manager for Cabela's, where I did orientations for groups from 3 all the way up to 300 was my largest class. I've also been a human resource manager for Lowe's Home Improvement. Same role there, a lot of onboarding, a lot of presentations, anywhere from small groups all the way up to store meetings that would be upwards of 200 people. And then I've also been an in-home project sales specialist. So much smaller, but a lot more presentation in the home with customers. So we're going to kind of talk about what's in it for you for using a PowerPoint to try and deliver your message to these groups. PowerPoints allow you to reinforce important concepts during lectures. So it allows you to talk and kind of expound on what your ideas are, but to be able to drive home those discrete points on what you really want the key takeaways to be. They're especially effective for large groups. It's not really that interactive of a process, so it's a great way to be able to speak from a group from 20 all the way up to 200 and be able to get your message across. It's also ideal for recorded presentations. You'll see this a lot in college courses and any type of asynchronous learning or training. It allows you to clearly convey your message, and then it also allows the learner to be able to go back and look at the different items that you've presented and use it as a review tool. It allows for clearly defined ideas and objectives. So it allows you to clearly state what you were trying to deliver. You've got a bullet point message, and you're able to clearly state your objectives. So there's no ambiguity. It's not a discussion. You're able to actually go up and state what you're trying to do. So that's going to be what's in it for you. It also allows you to convey macro level ideas in large group settings. So to be able to paint what the big picture is for that group. If you're trying to launch a new initiative or talk about engagement or anything like that, it's a great opportunity to be able to do that big picture idea and be able to present that. So what we're going to talk about today is when PowerPoints are going to be the most effective means for conveying information to a group, when not to use a PowerPoint presentation, some time and technology constraints that come along with using a PowerPoint or a slideshow, how to prepare for your PowerPoint presentation, some of the do's and don'ts, some of the tricks that you want to use and some things you want to avoid, some of the pitfalls when you're giving a PowerPoint presentation, and then just overall just some general tips that I'll kind of throw in throughout to help make your presentation a little more impactful. So when are PowerPoints the most effective means to convey information? When reinforcing an important idea is necessary. So not so much when it's a discussion, not when you're trying to come to a consensus, when you've got a defined important idea and you need to make sure that that information comes across to the group. When presenting high-level information to larger groups. So as new initiatives roll out, as big changes roll out, that's when it's going to be most effective. So when are they not effective? In small groups where deeper interaction is possible. So if you're in a group of 1 up to maybe 5 or 10, something where you've got that opportunity to actually have a discourse, a back and forth, this might not be the most effective presentation technique. It can kind of seem cold, and it really doesn't allow that interaction. If you are presenting a pre-done one, that may be something you want to do, but you would still deliver it in a slightly different way to a smaller group because it's opened up to presentations. And then when presenting large amounts of data or micro details, this format does not lend itself to true deep dives. You will lose the focus of the group if you're putting a ton of information up there or you're getting into minutia. That's something where it's better for break-offs at a later point or possibly doing hands-on demonstrations or just kind of doing brainstorming sessions. So some of the time and technology considerations you have to take in mind when doing PowerPoint presentations. presentations. It is less interactive, and you can definitely lose the attention of the audience if it goes too long. I always like to try and keep PowerPoints between 20 minutes and half an hour at most. You're just going to lose the impact. Without having that interaction with the group, it's hard for them to stay engaged. Not all locations have suitable conditions for presenting a PowerPoint. So it's a very specific area where you have to do it. You need to have a screen or the correct kind of lighting where you can actually set up a projector. If you're outside and you're doing a team building exercise, it's probably not the best place to do a PowerPoint. You're not going to want to hold up a screen so people can read it on a TV or on a little tiny phone. It needs to be on something that's very easy to read, easy to see, or it's just not going to be the most effective way. Technology issues can arise, so having a backup plan is necessary. Extra cables, extra cords, making sure that everything is charged up. Having a backup speaker is a big one. I will say some of the biggest issues I've seen with PowerPoints when people are doing audio-visual portions of it is having the sound that it doesn't work. The speaker dies because they brought a Bluetooth speaker, but they didn't make sure that it was fully charged beforehand. I can tell you that that's typically the biggest one, or having your clicker die mid-presentation because you didn't think to swap out the battery before you're giving a presentation to 300 people, and then your battery dies in the middle of your presentation. So making sure you have that. And then as far as a backup plan, some of the other things that you can do is you can have paper copies. So if you do have a complete failure, if you have a breakdown, power goes out. I had this at one a few weeks ago. The power went out. We had to go outside in the parking lot because the building got too hot. We had paper printouts of the PowerPoint so we could kind of read along and still stay on track for the day. So having all that kind of stuff in mind before you go into it will help you prepare for it. Along with that, you want to make sure you're prepared. So some of the steps for presentation is to make sure that it's prepared ahead of time. You want to run through your deck over and over and over again to make sure all your transitions work, that it all looks natural, that it's legible in the room that you're going to be in. Big key is making sure you want to check that you have high contrast between your background and your print that's appropriate for the room, just to make sure everybody can see it. Conduct a rehearsal to ensure the deck functions correctly. I cannot stress that enough. You can put together a great deck and it looks good, and it may look good on the computer when you're running through it because you're not paying attention, but until you actually put it up on a screen and walk yourself through it to see how it flows naturally, that's a huge part of it. You're not doing your due diligence if you don't. A great thing is, if it's possible, run through the presentation on the equipment you're going to be using. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to see it in the back of the room. It may look great on the TV, but in the room that you're in, the lighting may not be right for what you've got. I had an issue where we did this at an all-store meeting a few years ago. We bought a projector. The projector worked great in the training room. When we went live that night, in the back room, you couldn't see it at the back. So it worked great in the controlled environment we tested it in, but when we actually rolled it out in real life, the projector wasn't bright enough. We had a backup television that we brought and were able to hook it up to that. So we realized before it started, but we went into it for the entire week thinking we were going to use the projector. So being able to run through it on the equipment, make sure that it's focused, make sure that the brightness is right, make sure that the people in the back can actually hear if you're going to have an audio-visual portion of it. Ensure handouts used to provide additional information are correct and that you have extra copies. If you're planning on 100 people, bring 110 or 120 copies. There's always going to be some issue where somebody's going to need something extra, they want to take notes. And then there's nothing more embarrassing than going and having a 15-page slide presentation and missing 2 or 3 pages in the middle, especially when you're just trying to get those key concepts. So make sure that your handouts are crisp, make sure that they're right. If you're going to include the notes from your PowerPoint on there, just flip through them and make sure that they look